This is the Sound of Niagara podcast. I am here with Tony O.
Good day, Nathan. This is one of the Buffalo Banner days, weather-wise. It's absolutely spectacular. Some of the best weather in the country right now. And we're finally enjoying it as we get to the end of June and the beginning of July.
Yeah, but let's jump into the nitty gritty. All right, so let's start here we'll start with the big, beautiful, bold, bodacious, whatever, bill. And this bill is going to cause massive amounts of debt to the United States. It is, as you have said many times, Robin Hood in reverse. It is stealing from the poorest and most needy Americans and giving it to the most wealthy Americans. It is blatant oligarchy, kleptocracy, whatever you want to call it, whatever word doesn't destroy your snowflake tendencies. Scary. Tom Tillis is resigning. I don't understand.
He's not going to run.
Well, yeah, exactly. It's the
Right.
Jacobs move. Like, as soon as you say something out of step with the theocracy of the party, you get out of town. Because some reason, like, losing is worse than fighting for what you believe in and trying to hold the seat. I hate the whole concept. Politics is worse than it's ever been in the United States. But let's talk about the bill. What do you think of the bill? It's going to pass. This huge, massive, took 16 hours to read bill. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's 975 pages, and I have a sneaking feeling, and they also want to pass this under reconciliation, which means that they've got to get 51 votes, and they don't go through the normal process. But with reconciliation, they have to work through a woman who is the parliamentarian of the Senate, and she decides whether any of the things that they've got in the bill are going to be sort of extraneous or new types of programs. And if that's the case and it's not consistent with Senate rules, she's going to bounce it, and there isn't a whole heck of a lot that they can do about that.
But let's talk about the bill itself. I mean, forget about people, even me, I get bored by the legislative process of it all. It is, let's talk about the substance of it. What's in this bill? So people understand.
What's in it is they want to extend the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act from 2017, which is Trump's, only thing he really accomplished in his first administration. That's going to cost $2.2 trillion over the next 10 years. They're going to come up with a senior bonus of up to $6,000, which is $1.8 trillion over 10 years. Increase the standard deduction by up to $2,000. That's $1.4 trillion. Child tax credit, $800 billion. Business tax breaks, another $550 billion.
So you agree with my assessment? It's basically a giveaway.
Yeah, all these things
to the richest
are things
Americans
that are going to increase the deficit. Now, there are only three things of any import that are going to go against this, and that would be Medicaid cuts of $1.1 trillion over the next 10 years. Student loan changes.
What are the changes?
They're going to be diminishing the the amount of loans that government guaranteed loans that
are available. So you got to get private loans to finish your education,
which is going to have an impact on a lot of the graduate education for our physicians and healthcare providers, which is exactly what we don't need. And then they've got, cuts to poverty food assistance.
So let me ask you this, as someone who's a little more conservative, or maybe even a lot more conservative than I am, why are they doing this? Like honestly, do they really believe this is going to make the country stronger?
No.
So why are they doing it?
They're doing this because they're subservient to Donald Trump, and these people have little in their life but power. And in the event that they
So why
lost
is Trump
power,
doing it? Like, Trump could do anything. He's beloved by the working class. He could be a real hero. I think he's at a point now where he's jeopardizing even his working class base because other than racism, he doesn't have anything to give them. I mean, maybe that's enough, honestly. But
he's never really cared for his base. I mean, the guy talks out of two sides of his mouth. His base, Nate, are people, who've done work for him on projects. And they've consistently been stiffed over the years.
He doesn't care about any of them. I get that. But what I'm saying is he does care about power. And I mean, I was in a gas station today and I heard a couple people talking about how everything's more expensive and how it was supposed to get better. They were talking about Biden and how they weren't saying Trump's name. Like, I thought it was going to get better, and it wasn't getting better. It isn't getting better. What I'm saying is, like, this guy wants his face on Mount Rushmore, and he's not going to get it just giving money away to the richest Americans. And you pretty much get one shot at a massive bill like this. And this is not going to have the consequences he thinks it's going to have. Or, I mean, my question is, why is he doing this? Does he care about this more? I mean, I guess he does.
I'll tell you why. The reason he's doing this is because the only claim to fame that he's got is this 2017 Tax Cuts and Jobs Act bill. And that is designed to expire at the end of this year.
And he's so simple, he can't take that emotionally.
No, he cannot. And so bottom line, he says, what I've got to do is to keep that in place because that's the only legacy that I have. So that's why he's pushing to put $2.2 trillion in debt over the next 10 years in there. Then he has to put in these
and he'll be long gone, so he doesn't care. So what about Mamdani, though? I mean, sorry, not Mamdani. What about Tillis? Go to Tillis. I'm trying to move fast here because this is being talked about ad nauseum everywhere, and I checked some of the ratings on this. Average Americans don't care. They're tuning out because it's so boring. And whether we like it or not, that's the world we live in.
I got it, but it's boring until their hospitals close.
Sure, well, that's what's going to happen.
It's boring until they don't have access to healthcare. But it's like literally
every newspaper in America. I just was reading the New York Times, front page, huge letters. This is going to add like billions or trillions even of dollars of debt possibly, and no one cares. So
one other point I can make is this is maybe the crowning achievement or the validation of of what Steve Bannon has mentioned, right? Which is his tactic is to flood the zone, hit them with so much stuff they can't react to it. And in this big, beautiful bill, which isn't, it's a monstrosity. There's so much stuff in it, and they're trying to compress the time frame to pass it in such a small increment of time that people are overwhelmed. They don't know what they're doing. They don't know what's in it.
From a completely Machiavellian perspective, it's brilliant what he's doing. It's horrible for our country. But I'm just wondering, long term, why is he doing this? I guess he's doing it to serve his ego, like you said, but also his wealthy friends. That's it. That's all that matters. He doesn't care about regular people. He knows regular people do not have the bandwidth or time to really care about any of this. So think about why people really vote. They vote if something's directly in their personal interest or they have an emotional appeal to something. There's an emotion behind it. There's a story behind it. You talk to voters, right? I like this guy. He's funny. I like his face. He seems like he has a nice family. That's the kind of stuff people vote over, right? A lot of the reason why the Democrats are having problems right now, frankly, is because they're the people that kept people in their houses. That's what people think. I talk to people every day. They like, this is, Cuomo's the guy who kept me in my house. I mean, that's the attitude they have. So go ahead. I'm listening.
Yeah. So speaking of which, Donald Trump was in Americans' homes for probably 10 years.
Right.
With his apprentice show. He was with them at the grocery counter every week through the National Enquirer and other kinds of things.
Right.
He was a loudmouth, privileged developer, which was really bailed out by his family numerous times over the years. So he has been in the public consciousness for probably half a century.
Yep. And on WWE and all these other things. And he's good with the public. He's funny. He doesn't care about convention. I get all the reasons why he's popular, but I just wonder eventually it has to erode when people start feeling really desperate. And I think that those days may come. Maybe he'll be gone by then. All right, but Tillis, let's talk about Tillis. Tillis resigns. What do you think of this?
Well, he's criticized by the president. He feels that he's probably not going to be able to win an election. Much like Mitt Romney, the MAGA base, anything the president says they want. And if you criticize, get in the way of passing any legislation, giving him exactly what he wants, that's the craziest thing. I mean, we've got the Supreme Court giving him whatever he wants.
But Tony, if you're taking a principled stance, like Tillis is taking a principled stance, why not carry it through to its logical conclusion and run for office on a principled stance? Is the threat of losing that terrible to these guys? Are they that cowardly?
I think it is.
That's a shock. I mean, that's to me, I don't understand. As a human, if you're going to lose your seat anyway, why not fight to the end? That's just my attitude, but whatever. Okay, let's move on because I want to go to the next point. There's lots to talk about today. Iran, we talked about it last week in real time. There's a secret communication coming out that says Iran, that they're basically like, wow, that wasn't so bad. The hit wasn't so bad, right?
Right. And again, we had a disgraceful press conference at the Pentagon with the defense secretary impugning the media for having the temerity to question, some of the propaganda that he's putting out. And, this guy is a bush leaguer, Nate, who doesn't understand that the job of this administration and pretty much every other administration over the past 50, 60, 70 years has been to hide things from the public. And the media's job is to expose what they're hiding.
He's so defensive and insecure. Insecure, that's the word that comes to mind. He looks so insecure up there, just like screaming and ranting. Let me say this to you though, to the left-wing media, you really don't. Okay, for my entire adult life, I've been hearing about don't touch Iran. The consequences could be drastic. I really don't buy the counter narrative that this had no impact and it was no big deal. You drop that many bombs on Iran, and I know this is not fitting the neatly cut out narrative of either the left or the right. Come on. Without any warning, you drop, 20, 30,000 pound bombs or however it was. You don't think that their facilities are completely damaged? If lightning hits a tree outside my house, I lose power for a week. You're dropping that many bombs on this place. Okay, let's say you didn't crush the internal parts of the whatever facility. It didn't collapse. It's still extremely damaged. You think you're going to be able to process uranium in there? Sure, they probably removed uranium rather. But I don't know. The narrative by the left is that this is no big deal, is a joke too. I'm like, it's a big deal. Iran was not even able to get off a shot. Not one shot.
Well, not only that, Nick, you look at China and you look at Russia. These are two backers of them. As a matter of fact, Russia has been able to produce the damage it has on Ukraine in large part because of Iranian drones,
right?
Which they're importing. And did you get any benefit from Russia? No, they said it shouldn't be happening. Right. It's too bad. But, China, they get 15% of their oil from Iran. And, what do you see happening? Well, they're not really saying much at all. And also you look at the anti-aircraft systems that the Russians have, which the Iranians had bought. And that didn't seem to work too well either. And it also, I think, demonstrates that the United States is the only country in the world with a global reach.
Absolutely.
That can pretty much go anywhere,
Okay.
125
So let's just play this out. You're going to play the left-wing media. I'm going to play just a regular person. Here are the facts. All right. Got to tell you this is bad news, but Trump, without authorization, went ahead and without talking to Congress or Democrats or Republicans, he bombed Iran. He didn't hit any civilian areas. He bombed their nuclear sites. The good news is all we used were 2 pilots in a B-2. We don't know if it was completely destroyed, but we massively hit it over and over and over again. And then they didn't fire back, and they had no retaliation. Russia didn't help them. China didn't help them. It's over. Maybe they're angry, but they've always been angry at us. But what do you think of this fact pattern? Is this the worst case scenario? Hardly, right? Now you respond.
Yeah, well, I would say patience is a virtue. And you would expect to be on heightened alert. And as a matter of fact, you had Kash Patel, who is the director of the FBI, pulling agents off of, I guess it's border security types of issues, and putting them back on counterterrorism after having taken them off of counterterrorism in order to put them on the border. So they're expecting something. The U.S. is expecting something. And if I were Iran, I think I'd be biding my time.
Sure. I'm sure they are. It's a apocalyptic theocracy that hates us. I find it troubling when I see people like Candace Owens now and also Joy Reid, the left and the right, the far left and the far right on television, trying to justify the fact that Iran has preached death to America for 50 years. Now, death to America, listen, there may be reasons for Iranian people to not like the United States. But if you think the foaming at the mouth, like apocalyptic rhetoric of the mullahs in Iran can be justified because we did something bad 70 years ago or 80 years ago in Iran, I don't follow that. I'm sorry. Maybe I'm just too much of an old school, American. I think that when you're preaching death to America, taking American hostages and foaming at the mouth, I'm not going to be like, well, did you know that in 1961, that doesn't fly with me. Go ahead. Let me hear your side.
No, I agree. I mean, they have been, one of the greatest exporters of terrorism, supporting terrorist groups.
And saying the worst type of rhetoric about Israel, about Jewish people, about the United States. It is unjustifiable.
And I will tell you, I had an employee who was an Iranian guy. He was from UB years ago, and he was a wonderful guy. But this regime it's really trying to destabilize the world, and it's one of the spokes in the so-called axis of evil between Russia, North Korea, and Iran. And I think most places in the world would not be dissatisfied with having a regime change, although we have no idea what the next regime would end up being like. So,
well, don't get me wrong. I did not support the strikes. I thought it was crazy to do this unilaterally. It was too much of a risk. It was gambling. But sometimes the gambles pay off, and this seemed to go pretty well, all things considered. The world is nuanced, and you have to make nuanced positions. I'm sorry if it doesn't get clicks, but I don't agree with unilaterally attacking another country preemptively. But all things considered, I'm glad we're not in World War III right now. That's all I'm trying to say. And if you think it wasn't impressive by the U.S. military, I don't know who you're kidding. And if you think that Iran, I'm going to cheer on the mullahs in Iran, which their own people hate them, they despise them. I'm not going to do that. And seeing that being done by, far-right podcasters and then left-wing media types, I find it very uncomfortable. I find in general myself watching television nowadays and saying, I don't belong in any of these camps anymore. Go ahead.
No, I got it. What I would say is that the administration, ends up undermining their position. Let's just say that this was, really a pretty sophisticated operation to be able to pull this off. Okay, let's say we all agree on that. You can't say that this was the most sophisticated operation in our nation's history because you're sort of forgetting about the invasion of Normandy. Okay?
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Please don't tell me that wasn't. Don't tell me that wasn't significant. Just with the number of troops, all the stuff they had going on, and second, maybe it did a lot of damage. But without having any intel to speak of, which may take weeks or months to really get a pretty fair picture of what the extent of the damage was. The president comes out and says it was obliterated, the war is over, it's all done. Maybe that's true, but you can't say that the day after because you don't have the truth.
I will say this.
Mm-hmm.
All right, number one, where is Europe? You talk about where is Russia, where is China, where is Europe? Talk about irrelevant. I'm sorry to say that, but it's irrelevant. I mean, I can't help but say this, and I'm sorry if I sound like I'm a conservative saying this, but God, I think America looks pretty tough after that. I do. And I also think that Trump, listen, I hate Trump, but what Trump is doing in the Middle East, I don't have all the data. I am not a Middle East expert. But when you're bringing together Israel and Saudi Arabia, when you're pushing back the biggest terrorist state in the world, which is Iran, when you're, there's things are changing even in Lebanon, when you're embracing old foes in Syria and saying we want to give them a second chance, I can't help but think, maybe some good things are actually happening here. Maybe am I naive in thinking that?
Well, I do think he's.
That being said, there is a genocide happening in Gaza, and that he wants to take over. He said all these stupid things, but again, there are positive aspects coming out of this, despite the corruption and everything else. Go ahead.
There are, and I think you have to look at him as a business guy, and you know, he just does deals. That's all he does. He doesn't have an agenda. He doesn't have any, he just wants to do deals.
I know what business guys hate is chaos.
No, I got it. But what he's trying to talk to Syria about is, look, do you want to continue living the way you're living? And also for all these, he says, look, maybe we can do some trade. Maybe we can put together some deals. Maybe we can have economic development. I'm going to make money. We're going to make money off of it. But guess what? You will too. And you know what? I got to think that's better than
this is the schizophrenic. This is the schizophrenic approach of Trump, because, I mean, you'd think he'd be for free trade. You think he'd be for making money for America and everybody else, but he's not. But
his ideas are archaic. He's an old guy, and he thinks the old way, and he thinks this trade deficit is something which is really a boogeyman, and it isn't. We're a wealthy country. We've got money, and we buy stuff from all over the world. Right, that's the way it is. And you can't be the world's superpower and the largest economy in the world and say, I've been ripped off. As a matter of fact, he's even said when he went to the G7, in Europe this week, he even said, look, these are very nice people. I had dinner with them. They're okay. They're not ripping us off.
Yeah, because whoever he talks to, Laz, he can't confront people in person. He's uncomfortable with that. Even when he was trying to confront, remember Hillary the first time they debated, he was hyperventilating the entire time. Yeah. He was. Do you remember? I just
remember him stalking her, which was
stalking her, but he was also breathing very heavily. He was very nervous. All right, let's move on. I want to talk about Zoran Mamdani. I think I'm saying his name right.
Yeah.
What is his background? He's a Muslim guy. He grew up where? Right. He grew up in New York City. I assume. Where did he grow up? Do you know anything about him?
Not really. I do think you've got about 1 million, maybe 15% of New Yorkers being Muslims, and he's got a relatively what would I say? Low profile. He's been a low ranking, a backbencher in terms of government service. One of the things he did, which is really brilliant, and boy, there's so much we can pull out of this election. He understands media. In this way, he's sort of like Trump. Wow. He understands media, and he has been the master of short duration videos.
Well, listen to this. He's the son of Ugandan Indian filmmaker Mira Nair and political science professor Mahmoud Mamdani. So he's basically been reared to do exactly what you're talking about. Keep going. I'm listening. These short videos. Yeah,
and you contrast that with Andrew Cuomo, who had a super PAC of about $25 million, who was buying old media on TV, constant stuff on that, negative advertising on that. But his heart really wasn't in it, I don't think. He's tired. He thought he deserved this.
He's entitled.
He thought it would be redemption. And this other guy, like Trump, worked his fanny off. I got to say.
Well, when I ran for office, I did the same thing. I went everywhere. I talked to everyone. And I always told people, let me say this. I always told people, this is the only thing that seems to be working. I went on right-wing radio all the time, in Rochester and in Buffalo all the time. And every political consultant I hired, and the party kept telling me, you have to hire these people. And if you're listening to this, party people, you were nuts. And I told you were nuts back then. They'd find some scrub guy from like Harvard that was like high on drugs half the time and say, listen to him. And he would tell me, no, raise money. Why? Because raising money feeds the system. You pay you pay the political consultants. This is okay. Let me say, they come to you. All they care about is, this is what the party cares about. Are you using our TV people to produce your commercials? Are you using our TV people to do paid mail? Are you using our consultants? Are you feeding our system? And the people in that system, all they want you to do is make phone calls all day long for money. And the brain dead reporters who follow this stuff have come to believe that's also the only thing that matters. And they run these stories that are so simplistic about, oh, how much did this person raise? Or how much did this person raise? And they say, well, that's what wins elections. That's not true. What wins elections is party affiliation. And if you have the party behind you, they will support you. And the way they get the party behind you is to give them the most money. So it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. So let me just get to this point. I'm sorry. These guys would just tell me, raise money, raise money, raise money. I'm like, no, because all I'm doing is paying you guys. I should be out there meeting people. So Mom Donnie has absolutely did the right thing and talking to everybody, going on right-wing radio, going on left-wing radio, talking to everybody you can. Now, what I don't like what Gavin Newsom is doing, because he's bringing on Steve Bannon and legitimizing him. Instead of challenging him, he's like, Steve, that's a good point. Like, yeah, talk to Bannon, but fight him. Like, let's have a debate, a real debate where you challenge the guy. My point.
You know what?
Go ahead.
I think for Gavin Newsom,
Yeah.
and I don't know, Nate, you know these people better than me, but maybe it's impossible for him to say. What would happen, if he said, look, as governor, these are the 2 or 3 biggest mistakes I've made, policy mistakes that I've made. And I regret.
Authenticity matters. This is the problem with Democrats. They just get up there and be honest. People will accept anything if you're honest. That's my true belief. If you're faking it or you seem like you're trying to manipulate them or lie to them, eventually they'll get sick of it.
And what people are sick of is, don't tell me that anyone who robs a Walgreens and takes under $800 worth of stuff can walk out the door and that's okay. Because it isn't.
It isn't okay. It isn't okay. And I agree with that. You can't have rampant... You're talking about what's happening in New York City.
No, I'm saying in California.
Oh.
Where you've had everything locked down to the stores, and they have a law where...
all this stuff you hear about... You've been to California lately?
Yeah.
And what'd you think?
I don't know. I sort of liked it.
It's heaven. And like, you're going to point to the worst parts of California, Republicans, and say, this is how bad it is. I go to California quite a bit. I lived there for years. It is amazing. It is where the whole world wants to be. And the narrative that California is a failed state when they're producing more income than just about all the other states combined is laughable. Go ahead, I'm listening.
But they do have some problems.
Worse than the problems we have in our burned out southern tier and upstate New York.
Well, first of all, they do have this crime issue where people don't feel safe in stores because of the petty larceny laws that they have that are not being enforced. Second, I am a believer in markets, and I think the best idea wins. And I really don't like California telling people that you will not be able to buy a gasoline engine. Car with gasoline engine.
I tend to agree with you, and I also this back to Mom Donnie. I also don't think that creating a government grocery store sounds like such a hot idea.
No, please. I've seen them in remember Eastern Europe during the bad years.
Young people, listen. This is why people are like, Nate's a communist. I'm not a communist. I believe in free markets. And
you like Wegmans.
I love Wegmans. I believe in free markets, but what happens with free markets in America is all the benefits, the massive wealth from the free market gets taken by 1% of the people. So I don't believe in government grocery stores. I think it's a stupid idea. As someone who's spent a lot of time in Eastern Europe and in Asia, where they've experimented with these types of ideas, they always result in, guess what? Everyone getting bad oatmeal or something, everyone giving the same pair of pants. Nobody wants to live in that type of society. Markets work, but let's share the benefits of these markets.
I agree, and here's sort of a tipping point that I think people need to pay attention to. And the American dream has been, that you were going to do better than your parents did, right? It was upward mobility. Now, let me say this. Let's say, Nate, you were 35 years old.
Yep.
35 years old. Most of the people we knew when we were 35. They weren't renting. They owned a house.
No one owns a house now. Yes, right.
Okay? Mm-hmm. When we were 35, years ago, or at least for me, years ago, people may have had several kids, 2 or 3.
Yeah, I wish I had more kids. That's one thing I regret. I wish I had like 10 kids. I'm sorry, I do. Go ahead.
Don't be sorry. Be happy.
I love my kids, and the only thing that gives me great happiness, I didn't have more kids because I didn't know if I could support them forever. I mean, that many kids. It was a real challenge when I was younger. Go ahead.
So now you look at it today. How many young people would be in their mid-30s, early mid-30s, can afford to buy a house? Not a lot. Most are renting.
None. So many of my, cousins or nephews, they live with their family.
That's right. Let me ask you this. I don't know. How much college debt? How much debt did you have coming out of college?
A crud. That's like an unbelievable mountain of debt. That's one thing I did live through. It was rough. I'm hundreds of thousands of dollars.
There you go.
And I paid it off with great pain. And I don't know how young people are going to do it in an era of AI where you can't even get a job.
So I don't know. How did you feel when you had to gut it out to pay it back?
I think it put a massive governor on my life and opportunities.
I understand, but how did you feel when President Biden was
happy
forgiving
happy because I'm not a selfish bastard? I thought, oh, good, all these people are not going to have a benefit that I should have had. I could not understand the mindset. But I paid off my loans. I was like, what? Like, it was horrible. I don't want the next generation to go through what I went through.
I understand that, but from an electorate standpoint,
listen, we got to get
people felt that I didn't have a college education. I'm working. I'm not getting any benefit. No one's giving me any subsidy on a mortgage or on a business or anything like that. Why are they having that forgiven and I'm not? I think there was a lot of resentment.
I think you don't understand how many people have student loan debt in this country. It is a massive
Why didn't they come out to vote for him?
Because it didn't get fulfilled.
Or for her.
It didn't get fulfilled because the Supreme Court stopped it. There's a ticking time bomb in this country, and the ticking time bomb is student loan debt. If you talk to anyone under the age of 30, this is bigger than Fannie and Freddie. It's unbelievable. It is limiting people's opportunities to have children. It is limiting people's We do not invest in our people here. Now, and I always bring up these other countries because it's important. Like, if you're in business, America doesn't like doing this. It's very uncomfortable for Americans to say, this country does this well. Maybe we should benchmark them. But in business, you do it all the time. Oh, our competitor is doing this well. Maybe we should do the same thing. But in Denmark, you get paid to go to college. They pay you. They give you a monthly stipend to go to college. Because they realize, oh, we need to have an educated populace. In America, it's like, you snooty jerk, why would you go to school? It's crazy, the way we look at higher education.
Well, listen, I appreciate what you're saying, but I think this is a generational issue, and this is sort of the crux of the problem I think that we've got today. Historically, older Americans were poorer people, and younger Americans were wealthier people because they were working. And so we created this safety net for the elderly population in America. And what's happened is that instead of the greatest generation, the baby boomers have become the wealthiest generation. And our policies, our tax policies and political policies, they continue to push more money to people who already have it, and they're actually sort of taking it from the people who don't have it. And that's the crazy part of it. Because if people aren't having kids, if they're not able to afford homes, if the whole cycle tends to break down.
In 1975, I just looked it up, the average cost of tuition in Harvard College for undergraduates total was $3,300 a year. Total. Today it's $86,000.
Yeah.
So the problem is everything is more expensive. We push everything onto our kids. I'm proud that in this state, we have the Excelsior Scholarship for people who make less than $100,000. You go to college free here. And that's a great thing. Listen,
but Nate, it's very difficult for people who are paying $3,500 for tuition and said, well, I did it. I was okay. I worked in the summer, to identify with the crushing debt burden that students have today. Would you agree?
No. If we have to remember we're a society that has to be building towards something bigger, and we sacrifice for the next generation, this freaking attitude of like, I didn't get none, is gotta go. It gotta go.
But I'm saying when they didn't get none, it wasn't a heavy lift. Today it's a crushing burden, is my point.
Oh, I see.
I don't think they understand what it's like today. I don't think they had a mortgage. They didn't have like a $1,500 mortgage on their house and then a $1,500 mortgage on a vacation house, right? They didn't have that. But today we effectively have the same thing, where you've got this mortgage on your house and then you've got something called childcare, which is as much as a mortgage.
It is too expensive to live in this country. Average people cannot even buy food. And this is what the Democratic Party failed to understand. This is what Mamdani, despite his ideas about grocery stores, is trying to get to. He is talking about the fact that people in New York City can't live there anymore. They can't get to work. They can't take care of their kids. They can't buy food. I don't think his answers...
Right. But here's how he's like Trump, right? How did Trump get elected? The border is out of control. First term, right? I'm going to build a wall. Stupid idea. Sort of stupid like I'm going to have free bus passes, or I'm going to have government-owned grocery stores. I'm going to build a wall, and I'm going to make Mexico pay for it. Well, anyone with half a brain is going to say that just isn't possible, okay? Isn't? But that was his singular theme. This guy, it was cost of living for people in the city. This is America's greatest city, largest city. People can't afford to live there anymore. And I'm going to offer things which are nearly impossible to get in place.
This is what I'm afraid of.
It worked for Trump and it worked for him.
This is what I'm afraid. Well, it's demagoguery in a sense, or populism. But I like it over Cuomo. I like it over that sicko Cuomo, that vampire Cuomo, who's going after women's gynecological records to prove that they were lying about him. He's a crazy person. And go ahead. And wait. Listen, go ahead.
Since you mentioned him, I just got to talk about. You just brought to mind. I don't know why. Hakeem Jeffries and Senator Schumer. Let me ask you this, Nate. Do you think? How do you react to this? We've got this big, beautiful bill. We hear nothing from Democrats, and I
think they should all resign en masse. I'm not even kidding. They're useless. I see how.
What are they offering as an alternative to this stuff?
Listen, the only one that's engaging and interesting to me, you probably disagree, is AOC. Go AOC. Come on. Listen, she doesn't have all the answers. She's not perfect. I think that she speaks with clarity and excitement, and she should be embraced by the party because she'll bring young people into the party. But they're not doing that. Instead, I have to hear about Senator Schumer all day long.
Well, let's talk about the strategy. I believe the Democrat strategy is
there is no strategy.
It's just as craven as these Republicans.
It is. Well, not but it is craven.
Right, it is, because the Republicans, it's like, I'll bow down to King Don and do whatever he wants. I mean, seriously, that is their play. The Democrats are saying, well, you know what? We're also going to bow down to King Don and let him do anything he wants. And then the people will see the error of their ways, and then they will put us all in business.
The Democratic Party, this is what people don't get if you're listening to this. It's a corporation. It's like going to IBM in the 50s and getting a job. And then you work your way up the corporation. And then if the guy who runs the corporation likes you, he'll tap you on the head and give you a manager position. That means you could run for, city council or state assembly. If you think you're going to be able to go to the corporation from the outside and say, hey, I want to run the company, good luck. They're going to say, security. And that's what the situation is. People think of it as like a reflection of the will of the people, the opposition of the Republicans. It isn't. It is a corporation that is branding itself as the opposition, where you can go and serve in their institution and if you prove yourself a loyal servant in the institution and a good earner, a good employee.
You are right. And as a matter of fact, Nate, we really shouldn't be calling these people politicians, right?
What should we call them?
They're really members of the firm. Okay?
Yeah.
It's a firm.
It absolutely
takes care of its people, right?
Mm-hmm. What happens to you if you're at a real corporation and you stand up in a board meeting and you say, this is wrong? What do you think happens? They throw you out of the building. You're fired. And that's why no one stands up in the Republican or the Democratic Party and says this is wrong. Because when you do, you'll get fired. We don't have an institution in America to reflect the will of the people. And no one wants to get fired, because if you get fired, you lose your paycheck.
So Mamdani, how does he pull it off?
He pulled it off by a hostile takeover. And that's the only way to do it. When the firm is so poorly run that it's hemorrhaging people, it's hemorrhaging employees, it's hemorrhaging money, you can have a hostile takeover. When the firm is well established or entrenched in a place like Buffalo, what you get is a guy who has been, we got a new mayor, right? A new, quote unquote, new mayor. I didn't like the other guy that was running either. I thought he was marginally better because he was younger, and I thought maybe there's some hope there. But he was also a product of the machine, and South Buffalo political.
Yep.
This is why he didn't fight very hard at the end, because he's like, I can't burn all my bridges here. But the guy that won, I keep people saying, it's great to have a new, fresh face in here. I'm like,
He's not
fresh face?
Fresh.
Did you see his face? And then another thing is, he's been in office for 13 years. 13 years.
And Nate, 13 years, he certainly must have left some sort of imprint, right? What is it?
Did he advocate? And he's talking about downtown. Let's talk about my thing I wrote about downtown. Most people said, Nate, this is really kind of creative. Basically, I wrote a piece online where I argued, downtown maybe not to be the way to revitalize the region. The city of Buffalo is a small area, especially compared to cities like the city of Houston, right? City of Houston is like hundreds of square miles. The city of Houston is like 50 square miles or something. Maybe we should have a regional approach like other cities and say, listen, we're a region, and we should emphasize the strengths of the region and build up the region and stop thinking of this like we're the 1930s and Buffalo is a small canal city that's, a port city or something. It's not.
Well, speaking of which,
go ahead.
Right? I would say if you want to take a regional approach, if you haven't been to North Tonawanda and you like to eat,
it's gorgeous.
Right? I think it's like a very vibrant area.
It's gorgeous nowadays. And I grew up right there, so go ahead.
Yeah, it's in Lumber City. Another place which is really, I have to say, has sort of turned the corner and it's really sort of a quaint place to go to is Hamburg, New York.
Hamburg is great. North Tonawanda is great. Lewiston is great. East Aurora is like out of a dream or something. There's these beautiful places. North Buffalo is not bad either. The west side has some, great things happening. But I keep hearing about revitalized downtown my whole life. And I'm like, why? No one lives there. And the counter argument is, Nate, you don't understand cities. We need to create regional hubs. And the white flight of the 70s and the 60s drove people away. We need to reverse those trends.
How?
There's so they can work where?
How?
So they can get so they can go. People are gone. The Cheektowaga and these other regional suburbs are more diverse than downtown Buffalo. The only people who live in downtown Buffalo are rich kids renting out loft apartments.
Let me tell you, historically, how have American cities grown? They have grown, and after the Civil War, etc., they moved up to the north. Why? Because that's where the jobs were. They moved to Detroit.
There's
Why?
No jobs.
Because that's where the jobs were.
Jobs.
What are the jobs downtown? If you're an attorney, I got it. You have to be close to the courts. True. If you're dealing with social services, I got it.
And that's all that's down there.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But the mall is now shuttered and full of, this? That Main Place Mall now is a home of giant computer servers humming through the night in the darkness. How dystopian is that?
Yeah.
And by the way, that Main Street Mall was supposed to be revitalizing downtown.
Yeah, you got to let it go. How about this?
Yeah, eventually.
How about if we forget about that and direct our fire at traffic lights in the city?
Or
genius get these synchronized.
And you said, that's a very good point. Or as if you really believe in revitalizing the city, why didn't one of these politicians advocate for the stadium going downtown? Not one.
Yeah.
Why, that's a multi-billion-dollar project. Where'd you guys put it? In Orchard Park in the suburbs. And then you're going to get mad at me for saying maybe we should move beyond the downtown plan?
Well, you know what makes cities work, Nate?
Go ahead.
And you know this. It's one word.
What?
And it was also the name of a game show on TV in the 80s. Concentration. Right?
Yes.
You concentrate your assets,
yes.
right, in one place. And I'm telling you, if we had a stadium with
yes.
Some sort of a convention center,
yes,
that would be a destination.
That's what I advocated for. Let's listen. I'm not saying you abandon downtown, but stop thinking that we're
going to be saved by a revitalized downtown.
If downtown's going to come back, I'm going to tell you how it's going to happen. It's going to happen by creating a strong regional economy. And then maybe people will say, okay, there's some value in actually opening up the Statler Hotel. There's some this doesn't have to be saved by Albany or saved by federal grants. There's some actual, there's a business
organic
opportunity
growth, I
here.
think, is what you're talking about.
Yeah,
right?
Look at the places where you have organic growth already. That's the places that we should be fanning the flames on. I just got in a fight with somebody online. I don't really fight. I just read what they yell at me. I'm like, Canal Side doesn't make any sense. There's no canal there.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you put a boat there in the middle of the cement underneath an overpass and you say, this is Canal Side. it is literally confusing to people. Like, people go there, and I send people there because I have family that used to live in Buffalo, and I go to Canal Side, and they're like, they come back and they say, I don't see a canal. What is it?
Yeah. They are developing some of the outer harbor, some of the stuff there, which is fine. But, again, you're not getting the concentration of people that you'd like to have.
Do you know how many times I've been hearing about the outer harbor? Do you remember when they built the lighthouse down there and that was supposed to be the future? My brother worked in that lighthouse.
Did he?
Yes. That lighthouse is nothing. There's nothing there. All that stuff that happened is redevelopment in the 80s. This plan I've heard before.
Yeah. So, bottom line is, I think what you're saying, and we continue to see it with the Tesla plant and other kinds of things in the area, is we've got the thumb of government directing capital investment in our cities.
Yes.
Right? Instead of intelligently partnering with the private sector and saying, hey, how can we help you do more of what you do? Because ultimately, you are the job creators.
Right. The government cannot be the job creator. In Erie County, I think the second biggest employer is the government.
Yeah, and the thing that should make people really sad, I think, is any kind of project or economic development is happening because, like Hochul just came out with this the supercomputer that they're doing from UB. All this stuff is with government money. It's like, why in the H isn't Dell you're putting a supercomputer down here?
I don't know.
You know what I'm saying?
Why wouldn't she go to Dell and say, hey, can you partner with the University of Buffalo to work with, or some other company?
How about this? You look at these data farms, and the one thing they need that they can't get, which is why they want to build nuclear plants, is water and cheap electricity.
Listen,
what have we got here? That's it.
I'm just going to say publicly, I talked to people at Asian companies that wanted to invest in Erie County, actually out there near Batavia. They have that plant there. They said, listen, we'll talk to people on your team. They told me how absolutely inept our local leadership was and unable to talk about basic issues, unable to talk about employment, unable to talk about, there's so many issues they can't even talk about. If you go to Texas or these other states, they have absolutely developed and ready to go packages for these international companies. That's why they go there. And here, we have that stamp plant. There's nobody there. Listen, the economy in New York State's a tragedy. The economy in Buffalo's a tragedy. These guys have been in office for decades, keep telling us we're coming just around the corner. How long has Poloncarz been the county executive? 4 terms.
Nate, I call this the land of gonna. You know why? Because it's gonna be better.
Can you imagine being the county executive for all these years and saying, I see him on TV, I've done so much for Western New York, and I'm like, what? Well, the poverty rate in the city of Buffalo is 30%. What have you done?
By the way, it's been that way for how many decades? And how have your policies actually helped lift people out of poverty or no?
All I know that he did is he yelled at us about COVID. And listen, I think the right wing was way more off on COVID than the left. Obviously, they were making stuff up, making up science, attacking vaccines.
Yeah.
But the way I wasn't in office, okay? I was running for office during the time. The way the Democratic Party absolutely vilified and lectured the general public was not democratic.
Yeah.
It was dictatorial. And listen, there's so many things I talk about and complain about. Can I just play one more thing before we get out of here?
Certainly.
Okay, I'm trying to keep this under an hour. Peter.
Good luck with that.
Well, we're at 49 minutes right now. Peter Thiel. You know him.
Oh.
Did you see that thing on the New York Times?
I listened to a podcast with Ross Douthat. And I'm listening to it for the second time because some of the stuff he says is really sort of outer space, and it's really interesting when you listen to it. There's real hesitancy in his voice when Ross starts to question him on certain kinds of things. A real difficulty in trying to explain what the H is going through his head.
He doesn't want to say that the human race should continue to exist. That's part of the interview. He says, should the human race exist? And he hesitates for 5 minutes, hems and haws, and finally says yes.
Yeah.
So they just play part of it because it's a combination of religious fervor,
right,
with science fiction leanings,
right,
and and also before I go into it, Like Elon Musk too is really into science fiction. He's into video games, and he's into like Isaac Asimov, the Foundation series, and he's into Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. But all of these things are fiercely critical of hyper-capitalism or vulture capitalism. And like, I don't understand how these guys don't see the disagreement in their firmly held beliefs or their personal heroes and their actual lifestyles.
I think the reason is because when you are truly among the wealthiest people in the world, you are able to create your own reality.
Yeah.
And no one's going to tell you you're nuts.
But eventually you die like me and you.
Exactly.
And the guys, the reality will hit you in the face sooner or later, and you spent your life with the weirdest stuff. Okay, let's play this. Ready?
All right.
What does that mean to you? What is the Antichrist?
How much time do we have?
We've got as much time as you have to talk about the Antichrist.
All right. Well, I could talk about it for a long time. I think there's always a question. How do we articulate, some of these existential risks, some of the challenges we have, and they're all framed in this sort of runaway dystopian science text. There's a risk of nuclear war. There's a risk of environmental disaster, maybe something specific like climate change, although there are lots of other ones we could come up with. There's a risk of, bioweapons. You have all the different sci-fi scenarios. Obviously, there are certain types of risks with AI. But I always think that if we're going to have this frame of talking about existential risks, perhaps we should also talk about the risk of another type of a bad singularity, which I would describe as the one world totalitarian state. Because I would say the political solution, the default political solution people have for all these existential risks is one world governance. And the Christian framing, which in some ways is the same question, is Antichrist or Armageddon. You have the one world state of the Antichrist, or we're sleepwalking towards Armageddon. One world or none, Antichrist or Armageddon, on one level are the same question. The way the Antichrist would take over the world is you talk about Armageddon nonstop. You talk about existential risk nonstop, and this is what you need to regulate. It's the opposite of the picture of Baconian science from the 17th, 18th century, where, the Antichrist is like some evil tech genius, evil scientist who invents this machine to take over the world. People are way too scared for that. In our world, the thing that has political resonance is the opposite. It is the thing that has political resonance is we need to stop science. We need to just say stop to this. And this is where, I don't know, in the 17th century, I can imagine a Dr. Strangelove, Edward Teller type person taking over the world. In our world, it's far more likely to be Greta Thunberg.
This is my very specific question for you, right? Is that you are
okay? Before I keep going, he just compared Greta Thunberg to the Antichrist.
Nate, there are people with real problems today.
Yeah.
And the apocalypse comes up every month.
Oh, it's such a good point.
Ain't it? And instead of trying to help people who need help today, who you can identify.
Devastating point, Tony.
Yeah, he's off on this crazy tangent, which is, how many angels can dance on the head of a pin. It's essentially
what is the true Antichrist? Is it world government?
Or
is it well intentions? Or is it a guy like me who wants to collect all your data and make sure you're not watching the wrong type of porn? I mean, it's just so weird. Let's keep going with it, though. But good point, though. Right. Like, seriously, every day you want to see the apocalypse? Every day you can go to a grocery store in upstate New York and you can see someone suffering the apocalypse in that moment.
People look at the poor farmer who says, I'm out of business if you take these migrants away from me.
Maybe if this idiot over here cared more about people instead of dreaming about the fact that world government's going to limit his power and his authority. That's what he's really worried about, right? If there's a government
I have to ask you, why in the age would Musk think anyone cares about him going to Mars with his legion of children that he has produced when the rest of us are what? are going to be extinct
because they're myopic and they can't. There's no empathy in them. In his own words, empathy is a dangerous thing. Let's just keep going. I mean, this whole interview is crazy, but let's listen to the end of this clip.
Right.
You're an investor in AI. You're deeply invested in Palantir, in military technology, in technologies of surveillance, and technologies.
I can't
of
believe he did this interview, by the way.
Right? And it just seems to me that when you tell me a story about the Antichrist coming to power and using the fear of technological change to sort of impose order on the world, I feel like that Antichrist would maybe be using the tools that you were building, right? Like, wouldn't the Antichrist be like, great, we're not going to have any more technological progress, but I really like what Palantir has done so far, right?
Yeah,
isn't that a concern? Wouldn't that be the irony of history would be that the man publicly worrying about the Antichrist accidentally hastens his or her arrival?
There are all these different scenarios. I obviously don't think that that's what I'm doing. To be clear, I don't think that's what you're doing either. I'm just interested in how you get to a world willing to submit to permanent authoritarian rule. Well, but again, there are these different gradations of this we can describe. But is this so preposterous that the entire world has submitted for 50 years to peace and safetyism? This is 1 Thessalonians 5:3. The slogan of the Antichrist is peace and safety, and we've submitted to the FDA regulates not just drugs in the U.S., but de facto in the whole world, because the rest of the world defers to the FDA. The Nuclear Regulatory Commission effectively regulates nuclear power plants all over the world. People, you can't design a modular nuclear reactor and just build it in Argentina. They won't trust the Argentinian.
So go ahead.
Well, Nate.
He basically doesn't want anyone to tell him what to do, no matter what it is, even if he wants to build a nuclear reactor. He doesn't care about anyone. He doesn't want there to be an FDA. Why do we have an FDA? To make sure that
to protect us.
To make sure that Joe Rogan doesn't sell us the wrong brain pills that cause us to have epilepsy or something. It is like, yeah. I mean, there was a time, Peter, when there were no rules in America, and there was child labor and exploitation. And like I always say, situations like the grapes of wrath, where people were exploited. And you're the exploiter. You're trying to make yourself into the hero that's freeing us from these rules. When you are the Antichrist, if anybody.
Well, when you look at his pal, Elon Musk, you know what Doge is all about, really? What? It isn't finding waste, fraud, and abuse, because there really isn't that much at all.
There can't be, because there's
regulation. Right? Regulate, because he doesn't like any regulators telling him what he can and can't do with his business, whether it's making cars,
I'm the
rockets,
first one to say to you, we have too much regulation. I don't want, if I was in Europe, I get the argument. Hey, I don't want some idiot in Brussels telling me, how many stamps I can put on an envelope or whatever. But with no regulation, like you're talking about, he's talking about here, the fear of the FDA. The FDA is made of this is another thing. What is the FDA? It's a group of scientists that are esteemed by their community to say, hey, we're going to oversee this stuff. So guys like Chris Collins don't get to push a cure-all for Alzheimer's disease that didn't work and make millions of dollars off poor people that are exploited. Yeah, I'm sorry. We have a society that has rules to look over people and make sure that we're not ripping each other off.
And I think if you can just look at the current regulatory infrastructure, it's there for a reason, and because it was a solution to past abuses.
Absolutely. And listen, there's always a time to say, hey, let's figure out if these regulations still work. Let's talk about this. Let's talk about that. Maybe we need more here, less there. But this guy wants no government. He says, I'm really fearful of world government. But then he goes in to say, well, the actual government I'm afraid of is the American government, which he's trying to dismantle. Obviously, he's trying to dismantle it. Listen, I know you got to go, but give me 5 more minutes. I want to play one more part, because your reactions to this are fascinating to me.
The Democrat.
You would prefer the human race to endure, right?
I hope.
You're hesitating.
Yeah, well,
yes?
I don't know. I would.
This is a long hesitation. This is a long hesitation.
There's so many questions implicit
Should
in this.
the human race survive?
Yes.
Okay.
But I also would I also would like us to radically solve these problems.
Right.
And so, it's always, I don't know, transhumanism is this, the ideal was this radical transformation where your human natural body gets transformed into an immortal body. And there's a critique of, let's say, the trans people in a sexual context, or a transvestite is someone who changes their clothes and cross dresses. And a transsexual is someone where you change your, penis into a vagina. And we can then debate how well those surgeries work. But we want more transformation than that. The critique is not that it's weird and unnatural. It's so pathetically little. And we want more than cross-dressing or changing your sex organs. We want you to be able to change your heart and change your mind and change your whole body. And then Orthodox Christianity, by the way, the critique Orthodox Christianity has of this is these things don't go far enough. Like that transhumanism is just changing your body, but you also need to transform your soul and you need to transform your whole self. And so,
right. But the other, wait. I generally agree with what I think.
Before I go into this next part, this is actually kind of fascinating to me because I'm reading about these right-wing guys who are now forming relationships with AI. And it's just kind of funny to think the same guys who are, if a person cannot choose their gender, how can a computer? You know what I'm saying? Like they're falling in love with their AI chatbot, but your AI chatbot doesn't even have a body. Meanwhile, in the real world, you hate people that are transgender or what? It's a weird time to be alive. Anyway, go ahead. What are you saying?
What we need to do is, let's say he didn't commit a crime, and so we can't arrest him and incarcerate him. But let's say we had sort of an alternative reality where he could be tagged and then made to work in a grocery store for a week.
Who, this guy, Peter Thiel?
Yeah, or made to go in construction.
He couldn't
or
do it.
Teach middle school.
Couldn't do it.
Or ride in a cop car or on a fire rig.
Or work in a farmyard for a week. Good luck. Go milk some cows.
Pick some fruit for a week. I would love that. And say, look, I have to get you out of the ether and get your feet on the ground, and you're going to have a much greater contribution to humanity. And
listen, I'm the first one who wants to talk about ideas and talk about, I think the unexamined life.
This is just foolishness.
But this is just like sitting in a dorm room smoking weed and navel gazing. let the next part of this real quick.
Or belief that religion should be a friend to science and ideas of scientific progress. I think any idea of divine providence has to encompass the fact that we have progressed and achieved and done things that would have been unimaginable to our ancestors. But it still also seems like, the promise of Christianity in the end is you get the perfected body and the perfected soul through God's grace. And the person who tries to do it on their own with a bunch of machines is likely to end up as a dystopian character.
Well, let's articulate this.
And you can have a heretical form of Christianity, that says something else.
I don't know. I think the word nature does not occur once in the Old Testament, and so and there is a word in which, a sense in which, the way I understand, the Judeo-Christian inspiration is, it is about transcending nature. It is about overcoming things, and the closest thing you can say to nature is that people are fallen, and that's the natural thing in a Christian sense, is that you're messed up. And that's true. But, there's some ways that, with God's help, you are supposed to transcend that and overcome that.
I don't know what they're talking about.
What
what'd you take away from it? Go ahead.
No. What I can say is, it's sort of like, I guess, sort of the Jesuit philosophy, which is, your faith is worthless unless you can put it into action today. Here,
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
And he seems to be missing this. He seems to be missing this fastball that's gone right beyond him. We are all here for a limited period of time, and society in the world has tended to judge people most favorably, and we look up to people most favorably who have enhanced the lots
Of
of
others.
significant numbers of
Right.
people over time. Okay? It is not from these theoreticians that he's talking about. It's not from a lot of the, like I said, angels dancing on the head of a pin. It's for people who have improved the lots of lives of millions. That's who we admire, that's who we respect, and that's who we want our kids to be able to emulate. These guys are just off. They're just off, and they just need to be grounded.
Yeah,
And I wish they could
I
just-
think your point is very well said. I want to say one more thing about Peter, Mr. Thiel. The thing I want to say to you is, it sounds to me like you're using your religion to justify all of your bad behavior. You want to live forever. You want to be a transhumanist. You want to leave the human form so you can live forever and enjoy your wealth and your indulgences and everything else. You don't want there to be any rules upon you, and you're using the Bible, the scripture or the books of a Bronze Age cult to, sorry to put it that way, but that's really from an archaeological perspective what we're talking about, to justify your absolutely despicable behavior in 2025. And you have you're not even you are transhuman because you don't care about other humans. A lot of philosophers used to talk about the key component of what makes a human as opposed to another animal is cooperation. The fact that we have to cooperate to take down big game or to live or to harvest food. We can't survive by ourselves in a state of nature. We need other humans to survive. That is pretty unique to us and probably other primates, I would guess, but especially to humans because we don't have fur, we don't have claws, we don't have teeth, we don't have bite capacity. We have to survive through our ingenuity and our cooperation with other humans. This guy doesn't want there to be rules to apply to him. He doesn't even want a body. He's a freak. Go ahead.
Well, what we can conclude with this phrase, I don't know who said it, but you can quickly Google it. And it is, religion is the last refuge of scoundrels.
Yes, often is.
And I don't know who came up with it, but I think, we also had our Tammy Faye, right? Jim Baker.
Yep. Jim Jones. Go
right?
on and on.
You got the whole deal. So he's waded into this with a little bit of AI thrown in, a little bit of epistemology thrown in. And at the end of the day, he's like an intellectual Trump in that he wants to wade in chaos, which none of us can quite seem to comprehend.
Yeah. Here we go. Tony, well, before I go, you're a fun person. You're a fun person to talk to. You must be a great father and grandfather.
Well, I do like kids, and that's one of the reasons I went into teaching. They're fun. They're just they're all different. They're all unique, and it's our job to see that they're launched well. And I'll tell you, anyone who's had kids understands whether or not they've become independent. They're always looking to tap into our wisdom, or at least our experience, so that they're not making the same mistakes that we made. And that is our that's our mission in life, is to pass it on to the next generation and to help them to do a better job, hopefully, than than we've done. The yin and yang, which Peter Thiel, I think, is having a hard time understanding, is that the more you do for others, the more fulfilled you feel. And it seems like when these guys are caught in this doom loop of trying to figure out what kind of body they want to have or not, it just makes them worse.
The love you get is equal to the love you give. I think that's how it said.
I think that was the Fab Four came up with that at some point.
Beautiful, beautiful stuff. All right, sir.
All righty.
Talk to you soon. Take care.
Take care. Bye.